So on this example, I have actually gone ahead and outlined the front of my word using a black ultrafine tip Sharpie, and I've gone ahead and cut out using a ruler to measure a nice perfect rectangle around the letter, around the word, so that then I would be ready to attach this to a visual pun, because that is sort of the method, the technique that we are using to make sure that you can get your word in correct linear perspective without ruining all the work that you've done on your visual pun. We're going to be doing the word on a separate piece of paper, cutting it out so that there's minimal room around the word, and then literally attaching it to your visual pun. So on this example, I'm going to show you just another version of outlining sort of the depth area prior to adding any color. So here I'm going to use a red this time. And again, I'm just going to be going nice and slow. As you can see, I'm turning the page as often as I need to, and being very careful not to get any of my outlining with the red inside of the front of the letters. It does take a little bit of time. It can be a little painstaking, but the neater you are on this step, the better your overall project will turn out. So if you have straight edges, especially if you have a very rigidly written word where all the edges are perfectly straight, you probably want to use a ruler even for your outlining steps. And I will show you that in another video. So now I've got all of my depth portions outlined in red. So the next thing that I would do would be to erase all those pencil lines throughout the whole thing before I start adding any shading or any color or any patterns. So on this particular example, remember the sort of inside of the O right here and the inside of the E are both going to become depth portions. So whatever color I'm using to shade the backs and the bottoms and the sides, I would sort of do the same gradient on the inside of those portions, and I will show you that as well. And that's just because the openings there are quite small. If the openings were larger, like how they are on the top of the H, you might actually see the edge of the top or the side or the bottom in there. But because those are small openings, it's just going to be kind of like a tunnel to where you can just kind of see deep into it. So now at this point you have a couple of options. You can go ahead and add any sort of patterns. Like if you wanted to make your letters look like they have a brick pattern because it's a house, or if you wanted to add any other type of patterns or designs, you could go ahead and be doing that toward the front before you start shading the depth portions. So once you have the front to where you have added any patterns, bricks, gutters, shingles, anything that you want to embellish to make it make sense with the word itself. So just trying to think of things that are related to houses and architecture, or you can think more personally in terms of the actual home idea of something like this and add patterns and designs to the fronts of your letters that make sense to you specifically a little bit more than a generic version. So to show you guys the shading on the inside of that little O and the little E spaces, I'm going to go ahead and start on the depth portion on this one. So I'm going to use a red on the depth portions, and then some of the areas will be a warmer red and some will be a cooler red, but I'm still going to start with just my generic red. Once again, it's going to be darkest towards the letter, and then it's going to get lighter smoothly as you get further away from that letter. It's okay if you don't necessarily have white at the end of the letter, the end of the depth. As long as you have a nice smooth transition from dark to light, and we can see that the value does shift, you're good. I'm going to bring that same thing up here, because remember this portion is connected to the other portion that we just shaded. So remember, anytime you are shading, even if it is a small, quick transition like how it is going to be on these letters, you still want to work in layers. So now I'm going to go back in with another layer on top of that part, just kind of darkening the edge that is closest to the letter so that I can enhance that graduate transition more. So now I might go ahead and make this sort of my cooler red and even use a little bit of purple within those deeper spaces, just to show you how purple works very similarly to black as from the last videos. So once again, it's still going to be a transition from dark to light, but this time it's going to be even faster because that darker spot, the purple, is really only in the areas of the H where it is the darkest. So then I would keep moving along, but in the interest of time, I'm going to show you this sort of inner part of the O and of the E. I'm going to start sort of with the darkest value towards the top, and then it's going to gradually get lighter as we move down that little section. So hopefully you guys can see that a little bit. We can do the same thing on this side. And then it's going to get lighter as we move down. And then I can go ahead and go into that space with my purple, darkening the top portion again a little bit more. Still keeping it nice and gradual as I get lighter. And then the same thing on the E here. Nice and gradual as we get lighter. Might go over it with some more red to just really make sure the red appears on top. And because remember, each layer that we add to a shading step will help make the transition even smoother. So that would be what the inside of the O looks like and the inside of the E. So you can see that it kind of looks like a hole. And that's sort of what something that small would look like in terms of shading. So now I'm just going to continue working on the rest of the letters, just so that you can continue to see some of the graduation and the shading techniques that we use there to make sure they stay nice and gradual. So then let's say I want to make this an even warmer red. I would add a little red orange. I could add some yellow in there. Still working in a value scale type of setting. And then down here, I'll do the warmer one again. So remember that transition from dark to light. You really want to focus on making it nice and smooth, but now it's also going to be much shorter than what we've done on most of our value scales in the past. So you really have to make sure that you work in layers and make sure that you quickly adjust the pressure that you are using with your pencil so that you soften how hard you are pressing very quickly. That's going to be one of the biggest things, is making sure that you adjust that pressure with your pencil quickly but still smoothly. So now you see how those two types of reds, the warmer red and the cooler red, stand apart from each other as I build up those layers, which is going to help the top and the side, or the bottom and the side, in this case, look a little bit different from each other so that they don't get lost. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Darkest closest to my letter. And then lighter and lighter as I move away. Now on this H, because I kind of have like a corner down here almost, it's going to be darker here and get lighter as I move up as well. Simply because this kind of acts as like a corner, and we'll have a graduated value scale going up that side here like that, but also from the front edge towards the back edge of the depth. And then if I feel like that's getting a little bit too purple, I can just go back over it with the red to smooth it out even more, deepen the values, and enforce that the red is the color that is seen there. So you can alter the colors that you use. You can do kind of like what I'm doing, where the depth area is all very similar in color, or you can do a completely different color on each space, like each section here, because like this line would divide this space from this space, and this space would be divided by this line from this space. So each space could have its own color. Each letter, the depth on each letter could have its own color. It is completely up to you. The main goal here, once again, is to make sure that your value scales, that your shading on the depth goes from dark closest to the letter and then gets lighter and lighter very smoothly but quickly as you move toward the back of that depth portion.